Ashley said, this is unrelated, but how do you build an impressive portfolio in high school if you're unsure about what you want to major in? And I think a lot of the way that I approached extracurricular activities was really just doing stuff that I was interested in and really investing myself into that. And I think it was similar in everyone else's applications as well. And I think that like in my essay, like I talked about how I wanted that to connect to like my major, like career goals and stuff like that. But from my personal experience, that plan didn't work out exactly the same way. I'm at Harvard, at least, you don't pick your major until sophomore year. So like everyone's basically undecided, and it gives you an opportunity to like explore what you want to do. And even though I am on a very similar like path in terms of like um, the the like overall things that I'm passionate about. I'm not, specifically like going into healthcare. I'm more like realizing that I'm more passionate about education and psychology and studio arts and using that in a way. So I think just don't feel like you have to be tied down to a specific major or try to do things in your extracurriculars to point towards that. Just kind of try to pursue things that you're interested and passionate about.
Awesome. I see the most recent. What is something you wish you knew about each of your schools before getting there? That's a really interesting question. And one thing I wish I knew about Penn is it gets cold. I didn't know it got this cold in Philly. But that's one thing that I definitely knew. And I think needing to know what the difference between each school, I'm going to use Penn as an example because I can't speak on the other schools. But at Penn, we have Penn Engineering, Wharton at Penn, you have Penn Arts and Sciences, and nursing. I don't think that most students go into like even the Ivy decision knowing which school they would want to go into. Luckily, I had a sister that went to Wharton who told me, but I think definitely knowing if you click Wharton on that common application, that means you're in the business school. That means you only get to do certain classes while engineers only get to do their engineering classes. So that decision, that one click on the common app makes a huge difference. So making sure to like look up and understand which school you're clicking, because I have a lot of friends who would love to transfer into Wharton that can't because they chose the college and they might have to take extra classes and they can't do it. And it was just one click that made me get into Wharton and not them. So make sure you guys do some research, I would say, for that. But anyone else can answer that too.
I guess like I'm not sure if there's anything about Yale specifically that I wished I knew about. Like I don't know. I think I knew a lot about Yale, to be honest. And the reason I say that is like I had a really weird like committing process where I actually didn't commit to Yale. Like I committed to Harvard and then I uncommitted and then I recommitted to Yale. And I think I learned a lot about the school in that process. Would not recommend. I would say commit to where you want to go. And my gut feeling was always that I wanted to go to Yale. But what I learned in the process about colleges in general is that like when they say like, oh, research the major or something that you want to do, if you have a strong sense of the major you want to do, this is not for everyone, but I did have a strong sense of the major I wanted to do. Like understand that program and like how it's relevant to you. And what I realized is that like Harvard specifically like happened to not really have that program and Yale did. And I kind of convinced myself like, oh, like Harvard is Harvard and it's amazing, but Yale's also Yale. And so in the end, like go where you want to go for the reasons that mean the most to you. So it's not about Yale specifically, but about colleges in general. Like if you have your gut tied to a place, like this is talking about like when you're making the actual decisions, like once you've heard back from schools, if you have a strong gut feeling about a place, like stick with that. Because I didn't. And then the next day I was like, what did I just do? And it was honestly hell trying to like reverse that decision. But I'm very glad I ended up where I did. So yeah.
And also to go off that, and I saw another question about why we chose the schools that we chose. I would definitely, after you get into certain places, go to the admitted students days. So I was early decision, so it didn't really matter much for me. Although I did meet like 5 people, so that when I came on campus in August, I knew 5 people off rip just because I went to admitted students days. For and I'm sure Manuel, Dom, and Neelam might be able to touch more on just the regular decision, or if you applied early action too, and you actually do have to make that decision, going to admittance student days is very helpful because you get a small little picture of the school, and two, you meet a bunch of people that you might not necessarily end up going to school with, but a bunch of my friends that went to admitted students days know, people from all over, whether that be, Harvard, Penn, a bunch of different schools around the country. So I think it's, if you can, and it might be kind of tough considering circumstances, but whatever you can do to even make up for, going to that admitted students days, I would highly suggest.
I think like social media groups actually like admitted students too are really like we're really popping off like when I got in and like even more now. And so yeah, I would definitely like participate in those and try to meet people because it does make the transition easier to like have people that you know in the first couple weeks.
I see a question saying any advice on extracurriculars. I feel like I'm not doing enough. And I think I have an example of a friend of mine who was applying and she had to babysit her sister every single day. So it was hard for her to do anything else other than her home duties. And admission officers are understanding. They're human, you know what I mean? So they see that like she has duties, she showcases responsibility. Maybe she's not doing taekwondo nationally, but they are understanding given the circumstances what you have to do. If you can't afford to start a club, if you can't do XYZ, like they're still understanding. So I think not having a ton of extracurriculars, as Addis said, he only played basketball and started the club. Like you don't have to have an ample amount of different examples.
Also, along with that, like I know certain schools like might not offer like a ton of AP classes or something like that, and that admissions officers also pay attention to like what type of school that you go to, and if they know that your school only has one AP, well, you took that AP, that's okay. Like that shows that you were still pushing yourself in the environment that you were in, and um, yeah, they just really, I do think that admissions officers take a holistic perspective, especially like with the context of the pandemic. I think that they will take those factors into account. So I would just be honest about, what you are involved in.
Yeah, I would say like generally when it comes to extracurriculars, I think they're like, I remember when I was going through the college process, there's all these websites like selling different theories on how you get into the Ivy League. And they're like, some students have nodes and some students are well rounded and they do everything. And I think like all of that is a little bit like ridiculous in its own way. I think you should just do the most of the things that you care about. And that sounds like a little cliched, but I would really say like in my experience, I really loved Model UN and international relations. So I tried to do the most with it that I could, like locally and like nationally, if I could get there. And I really loved volunteer work. So I tried to volunteer as much as I could. And I remember getting really stressed out the way that like a lot of people do. Like I'm from New Hampshire and we don't have the United Nations in our backyard, right? And I had friends from New York City who were interning at the UN, and I was like, literally, how do you do that? And I was getting stressed that I didn't have something that they had, and I was panicking. But at the end of the day, like just do the most that you can with the resources that you have and with the things that you care about. Because I do think it's really easy for admissions officers to look at an application and be like, they were literally in every single club in their school, but they never once had a leadership position. So it's kind of like dipping your toes in everything, but it didn't mean much. They can see right through it. So like try to find things that you love. And even if the thing that you love is not an academic thing, that's great. Like if you love to dance, do a lot with dancing. Like it doesn't have to be super academic all the time. I know these are academic institutions, but like they want you to have passions outside of the classroom because they have things outside the classroom.
Okay, awesome. We are rounding up to our hour and 30-minute mark. So I don't think we're going to have time for any more questions, unfortunately, but we are going to have plenty more kickback lives. Also, you see our Instagrams are in our names on Zoom, so you can feel free to message us if you have questions. So yeah, thank you guys so much. And that is all for today. Bye, guys.